Welcome to another episode of Health Revolutionaries. I'm so excited to introduce Juliann Paige. She's an acupuncturist and physician, in my opinion, which is a very rare combination. She has her master's in traditional Chinese medicine, which I always say, if you want to learn how to heal, you learn Chinese medicine. Yeah. And with that, she opened a medical practice that specializes in mycotoxin illness, which is mold, and mysterious illnesses, which I hope we get into a little bit later. Did I miss anything? Could you introduce yourself in your own words?
Perfect. Thank you. Yes. So I'm Juliann Paige Abecassis. As you said, I'm an acupuncture physician. I opened up an integrative wellness practice in Jacksonville, Florida, but we also have done telehealth since the start of our practice. And I recently got hired at Mayo, so I'm one of their resident acupuncturists as well in the hospital system.
And I think that's really exciting that Mayo Clinic is opening that up to acupuncture. And I don't know if recognizing is the right word, but finally putting into good use what we've known for so long.
Right? It's about time that things kind of caught up, but it's nice to be part of it.
Absolutely. And you've had your integrative practice for 6 years, right? So you've been...
Yeah. So I started that in 2016. So just about coming up on, is that 5 or 6?
2021, 5, going on six years. Math is not my strong point. I totally run away from it.
Yeah, so 4 or 5. It's 5 years in private practice, and then a little before that, I was working at another practice.
That's awesome. So you're knee deep in it, and you know what's going on here.
Yes.
All right, let's get this started. So the first question I have, and I'm sure a lot of people do, because, we want to talk about misconceptions about integrative and functional medicine. Can you just explain the difference between integrative and functional medicine? Because I feel like that term's thrown around a lot and people don't really understand what functional is and integrative is. So you can just kind of explain the difference?
I think the biggest misconception to start with is that integrative and or functional medicine is not well regulated. And I think that there is some truth to that because there's so many little courses. You could take a little online class and then you could say, oh, I practice integrative medicine, but you don't have a licensing board, you don't have a medical license. And so it does get a bad name because people have had bad experiences because they go to, individuals who are not reputable. So that's the downside. It's not well regulated. So you have to do a little bit of homework. So functional medicine is it's usually a term used by Western medical physicians or people in the Western medical institution who then learn more integrative practices. And there are programs set up to teach them that. And that's how functional medicine kind of got coined. Integrative medicine is using Eastern and other worldly types of medicine, herbalism, Ayurvedic, and then combining Western knowledge to bridge the gap between the two. So functional, we're doing a deep dive into other clinicals, maybe some labs. Integrative, we're really bringing in other types of modalities in medicine together.
So functional is more of like getting to the root of what is going on. Like we think we get all the tests, we get this and that. This is the problem. And then integrative is using a worldview of all different ways, like a buffet of healing.
Yes.
To hit the problem.
Yes. So it's important to find someone who's not only functional, but is also integrative, because if they're functional, that's phenomenal, but they may be missing acupuncture or food therapy or other incredible modalities of healing. They may not tap at all into emotions. And so it's a very important piece to the puzzle, but you really do need a well-rounded approach, which is why we practice both.
Absolutely. And so talking about the misconceptions of each, what is one of the biggest misconceptions that you find? And we'll just start with functional medicine because I want to hit both equally because I feel like they're both equally important in this. But what is one of the biggest misconceptions in functional medicine?
I would say the misconceptions with functional medicine are that certain tests don't exist when they do. So for example, we've had patients come to us from renowned hospitals and they'll say, I think I have mold. My doctor's telling me that mold testing doesn't exist. And we're like, that's not true. There's definitely tests for mold. So I think there's a lack of education around how functional testing works and how in-depth it is. And I wish that people started to embrace the fact that there are so many tests out there, so many diagnostic tools. So I think a misconception around functional medicine is just that it's not as much of a deep dive as it really should be given credit for. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. See, I'm not even aware of, I mean, that's why I'm so excited to talk to you, because I'm not even aware of these tests that even might exist. So mold, and what's a couple other tests that people, I mean, that you commonly test for that you feel like the public might not even know about?
Yeah. So the biggest one is comprehensive stool analysis. And this is something we hear time and time again. People go to every GI specialist and they end up at our office and they're like, I had an endoscopy, a colonoscopy, I've had a barium swallow. I did a test for H. pylori, a test for SIBO, and I ran out of tests. And we're like, why didn't you just start with the stool analysis? It's so incredibly comprehensive, and it's going to give us a huge picture on your commensal gut bacteria, if you have any pathogenic bacteria, if you have any kind of imbalance in yeast, your digestive panel, what you're metabolizing, your inflammatory markers. I mean, it's so comprehensive. And yet it's not done enough. And so we run a comprehensive stool analysis for these people, and it's like, bam, problem solved. We figured it out.
Wow.
So that's one test.
I feel like this is something that we should get done like regularly. I mean, this test,
yeah, right,
should be done like yearly. You know how you have your yearly checkup for your skin and whatever. Why don't we have just a regular stool analysis so we know exactly where we're at with our gut?
I would love that, especially because we know the vast majority of our immune system stems from our gut. Mm-hmm. Inflammation stems from our gut. I mean, the gut-brain connection is huge. So right now we are the most inflamed, the most anxious, the most depressed ever to exist. And so it's like, why aren't we looking at the gut more closely? Granted, they're expensive. Insurance, I think insurance has maybe reimbursed it once in my career that I've seen. And so for people to come up with an extra, $300, it's hard. Mm-hmm. And then you need to go to a professional who not only can order the lab, because, this is the other thing people need to watch out for. As an acupuncturist, at least in the state of Florida, you can order almost any test you want. We have a very large scope of practice. Just because you can order something doesn't mean you can read it well. And so you need to know your limitations. So for example, I order the labs in my office, but I have a naturopathic read it because she spent 4 years studying lab analysis. We don't spend much time on lab analysis. So am I capable of reading it? Yeah. Should I? Probably not. I'm going to pass it over to the expert. So it's important to have a team that knows their limitations and not try to be a hero and do everything for everyone.
Oh, I think that's a great point, because I feel like in our current medical healthcare system, it's a lot like that. And that's kind of a lot of really frustrating. So I feel like in this day and age, we're kind of moving towards this, this type of medicine, and we all need to work together as a team and know our spots and just really be a team player for the people who are sick.
Exactly. And I think an important, thing to mention is if I am passing on the areas that I'm weak in to someone who's strong in those areas, I'm freeing up my time to do what I do really well. And there is, unfortunately, a never-ending plethora of sick people. And so it's not like, we need to be greedy with our patients. I'm going to do what I do well so I can make sure that my patients get in the hands that they need, so we can benefit our communities in the best way that we can and create a healthier generation. And I always tell my patients, you're not here with me forever. That's not the end goal. You're not taking a supplement for the rest of your life. You're not going to be on a forever plan, because I'm supposed to teach you how to become your own health advocate. I'm your crisis management. We're going to help heal this little situation, and then we're going to move forward. And you can come to me for maintenance or something else arises, but you're not going to be with me forever and ever and ever and ever. And it drives me crazy when I see practitioners that practice in the opposite way that I do.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's our system. It's our current healthcare system is to keep people sick, because if you keep them sick, you can keep their money. And so
yeah, that's true.
That's a big problem. So one more test. Throw me one. I'm a big 3 person. So we got mold, we got bowels. Give me one more test. People that are very helpful that people might not know about.
So the other one that we use in our office a lot is called Dutch Complete. It's a hormone panel, and it's done via urine at home. And oftentimes, when you go to your gynecologist and they do a blood panel, they're checking for a few things, 5 or 6 things, but it's so limited. you'll get an in range number or an out of range number, but you're not getting anything else. When we do a Dutch hormone panel, we're able to see how the hormones are being metabolized, in what pathways they're being metabolized. Therefore, if something's being metabolized incorrectly or unfavorably, you're going to be at higher risk for breast cancer or things like that. And so we're able to see not only where your hormones lie, how they're being utilized and how they're being metabolized. And that information you don't get from blood work, or not the blood work that's being used in a gyno office. And for someone who I have a history of endometriosis, and I didn't know about these tests until I was, maybe 28 years old, and I was diagnosed at 13. It would have been so beneficial for that, 10 plus year period, 15 plus year period, if I had the right testing, so we could have supported my body in metabolizing out the estrogen in a favorable pathway. No one brought to my attention. I went to multiple endocrinologists, multiple gynecologists. It took a naturopathic doctor to bring that to my awareness.
Wow. I haven't even heard of that test. And I'm just sitting here, I'm like reeling, I'm kind of blown away, because if you start testing hormones, we got to start talking about thyroid. And thyroid is a huge problem for so many people. Is this one of the panels that you use for helping with the thyroid?
So for thyroid panel, no. Dutch is specific to not gynecological, sex hormones, because male and females can do this test, and as well as some adrenal hormones as well. When we're looking at thyroid, our biggest pet peeve in the office is when we tell someone, make sure to get your thyroid tested. We want the full thyroid panel. And then they come back to us with like TSH, T3, T4. We're like, where's the rest of the panel? So now we have to say, because if I order you a blood work, it's not going to go through your insurance, unfortunately. So you can either go through your GP and get it paid by your insurance, or you can pay cash. I could send it to Quest and you can pay cash. So what we now have to do is write them a list of the full panel written out, because if we just say thyroid panel, it comes back with 3 things. So we have to write out every single thing that we want, give it to them. At least 50% of the time it comes back and it's still missing things. So then we have to send them to Quest ourselves. It's so frustrating why we just can't get a comprehensive picture from the get-go. Why do we have to wait for people to be so sick to then get the comprehensive picture when we could have gotten the information before they were catastrophically ill to prevent it?
And thyroid problem is, I can't even tell you how many of my personal patients have thyroid problems.
It's rampant.
It's insane. And the fact that we can't even get good snap picture from the beginning of this because our tests are so screwy. That's wild to me.
It's very frustrating. And, me and one of the doctors in my practice, we talk about it all the time. And we're like, is it laziness that these aren't being ordered? Or is it because these doctors don't, and it's probably most likely this, they don't want to have to justify themselves to the insurance company, because the insurance company dictates care, and the insurance companies, they're not doctors, they're not physicians, they don't know your patients, but they dictate the care. So if you put in a full thyroid panel and the insurance company says, but why, that's going to take up more of your time, more of your energy to have to justify it to see if it gets approved. So it's easier just to say, let's just do TSH, T3, T4, and if it comes back, you're, abnormal, then we'll submit the rest. But that's not a full picture.
I feel like for this new type of medicine, it's coming more and more apparent to me. And I don't want to go crazy on this topic, but I just want to, for our listeners, we're going to need a new insurance setup for this new and upcoming.
Yeah. So for the past 10 years, insurance has, in terms of when people open up their own practice, insurance has been on the down and cash practices have been on the rise. And that's, not because we're trying to get paid more, because trust me, it's still hard to get paid. We do it because we have the flexibility to get what we need. And when it comes to insurance, you have to fight them hand, teeth, and nail for it.
And it shouldn't be like that. That's not why the system was created. So,
yeah.
So that's just going to be definitely something on the horizon as a new insurance company for what we got going on these days. But,
and I hope someone steps up and blows it out of the water, because we need a reform.
Oh, girl, preach on. Okay. Yeah. And so let's go towards the integrative medicine portion of this. So talk to me about some misconceptions that you feel are in the integrative medicine realm.
Yeah. So one of the biggest misconceptions is that it's woo-woo. It's just hippie stuff and it's just woo-woo. And I don't really believe in it. Or I'll hear people say, Yeah, my cousin once did that, but I don't believe in it, but she thinks it might work. It's like, it's so insulting. It's such salt to the wound for someone who spent 4 years post-grad studying it. But my rebuttal always is, it was the original form of medicine. It's been around for 4,000 years, and it wouldn't have stuck around if it didn't work, number one. Number two, there's a tremendous amount of studies now, looking into the efficacy of these holistic modalities. And it doesn't take long. You can go to PubMed and you could type in cupping, acupuncture, ear seeds, any of these things, Chinese herbals. There are dozens and hundreds of studies. Actually, one of the studies that we just posted on our Instagram, we're always posting stuff online, said that, was it cupping the knee for knee pain was more successful in treating the pain than a Tylenol was. And these are all studied. So it's like, spend some time on PubMed, you'll have a blast.
Thank you for bringing up cupping, because I'm a massage therapist, so I do cupping a lot, and people are like, oh, I don't want to do that because I don't believe in it. And I'm like, wait a minute here. They're like, well, what does it do? I mean, it's all kind of woo-woo stuff. And I'm like, it uses your body's natural intelligence to heal itself. And people are like, well, let's just skip it because I don't believe it.
Well, I always say babies and animals, they don't have the ability to form an opinion and have a bias. And so if we really want to see if something is working or if it's a placebo, do it on a baby or an animal. And we do acupuncture on animal. Well, I don't, but the industry does acupuncture on animals all the time. Veterinary acupuncture exists, and those animals get better, which goes to show you it's not placebo if it's working on these animals. Same thing for babies. I had a baby in my office last year with 103.1 fever, and it wouldn't break. So I, using my knowledge, I bled a point on the apex of the ear, which we do when there's a really high fever. And within 2 minutes, it stabilized down to 101. And that was a fever that was ongoing for 24 hours. And so, believe it or not, I always say, it's really, believe it or not, it's still working. So.
And I'm really glad. I feel like science is kind of keeping up now with ancient wisdoms and medicines, because for years I've been telling people to go outside and walk around with your shoes off, just ground in the ground. And people are like, oh, that's hippie stuff. I don't hug trees.
Please do. It'll bring down your inflammatory levels. It'll boost your mood. It'll support your immune system. It's all studied. PubMed has so many studies on grounding. We just did a TikTok on this maybe a week ago.
Did you really? What did you talk about? Just real quick.
So this was it for COVID long haulers? I believe it was in the COVID long hauler series. And I gave 5 things you could do to support. And one of them was grounding, because it's scientifically proven to support your immune system, bring down inflammation, support mood, help bring your body back into homeostasis. I mean, as an adult, when was the last time, not you, but when was the last time most adults were outside making contact with the earth? Most of them probably when they were kids, honestly. Or if they've gone to the beach, but that's it.
Absolutely.
It's something we need to be doing every day for a minimum of 15 minutes a day.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for saying that. Because
it's free medicine. Why wouldn't you do it?
And it's like all we come in contact with are these artificial materials that we've created. And so mud and grass and water, our feet never touch these surfaces. And then people are like, well, it hurts my feet. And I'm like, oh, I don't know what to say to you at this point.
Yeah, go get in some sand, start gentle, but it's free medicine.
For sure. And then other than people thinking this is woo-woo, which now science is starting to prove a lot of this, what other misconceptions with integrative medicine?
That we are not trained. We don't have education. They think it's just a certification, like, oh, you took a weekend course. And I'm always like, no, I went to school for 4 years post-grad, and I cried a lot, and it was really hard. I did all my national board exams, and it was a miserable, very strenuous time of my life. So I worked for this title, and it's not just a little dinky course you could take online. Mm-mm. And a lot of us in this type of medicine, we are regulated by medical boards. We have a medical license, and we have to keep up with our CEUs. It's a pretty regulated industry.
I agree with you. And I don't feel like a lot of people understand that, because I got my teaching as a healer in Thailand as Thai massage. And before I went to Thai massage, I got my bachelor's and my master's from university. And I tell you what, the Thai massage course was one of the hardest courses I've ever done in my life. It's what I take my most pride in. I mean, they don't mess around there. Like if you aren't on a point where you need to be, you get knocked. Like they'll kick you in the butt, they'll slap you in the head. And it's like, if you're going to do it, you better do it right.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that. And so when I came over here to get my credits, because I need to get certified in the States, they were like, well, we can't give you credit for some podunk school that you went to in Thailand. And I was like, one, no. Two, our massage board absolutely is accredited in the States here. But you know what I mean? I don't feel like people really understand that integrative medicine has its standard. And I think it was one of the hardest courses I've ever been through.
You know, that actually reminds me of something I just want to slide in here.
Do it.
So, you know, in this integrative world, once something really works, we all kind of want to get our hands in it, right? We all kind of want to be able to do it and offer it to our patients. That's kind of like the whole don't be a hero thing. Do what you're well trained in, and the thing that you're not well trained in, just make a good referral connection so we can all better our patients in the best possible way. Well, acupuncture got super, super popular for a while. And the chiropractic board decided, you know, we should be able to do acupuncture as a chiropractor. And so these chiropractors take weekend courses then are able to say that they practice acupuncture. They're not allowed to use the word acupuncturist because that's specific to my profession, but they could say they practice acupuncture. And it's so frustrating because we spend 4 years learning pattern differentiation, tongue and pulse diagnosis, point prescriptions. It is such an intertangled web of medicine. It's not just point, needle, done. I could just throw a needle in the body, done. If it was that easy, we wouldn't have had to study so long. And so people will say, well, I tried acupuncture and it didn't work. And then we're like, well, who'd you see? Someone who's an acupuncture physician, someone who's board certified? No, I went to my chiropractor. And I'm like, well, the chiropractic board certified them to do it. That's like the acupuncture board certifying me to do your back adjustment. They would never, but it's frustrating. And I love chiropractors. I see my chiropractor twice a month. I adore him, but I only see him for chiro. I don't see him for acu because he's not an acupuncturist.
Yeah. And I just want to slip this in too, just because I feel like this is important for people to understand the difference between dry needling acupuncture. They're two very different things.
Yes, they are.
Do you want to take this and run with the baton on this one?
So dry needling is essentially trigger point therapy. It's like my shoulder hurts. Okay, no problem. We'll put a needle there. Acupuncture is my shoulder hurts. Okay, let's figure out the meridian. Let's figure out the underlying pattern. Is it chi stagnation? If it's chi stagnation, let's do some points in the liver. If it's, the meridian of on the shoulder, maybe we'll do a point in the pinky. There are so many different ways to understand an underlying pattern. That's acupuncture. Dry needling is this hurts, no problem, we'll throw a needle in. It's trigger point therapy. Is it effective? Yeah, of course, if you have pain and you throw a needle in, it's going to be effective, but it is not the same thing. And it needs to be definitely identified as something different.
Yeah, I'm constantly telling people that, like, oh, they did this and it was like acupuncture. I'm like, no, that's dry needling. It's like, it's literally what you're doing is like damaging the area. So it's like a inflammation response. So the body goes into
it's an inflammatory response,
which is great. Don't get me wrong. Like it works. Like I've seen it work miracles on me personally, on clients and things like that, but it's not acupuncture.
And this is the other thing to keep in mind. Acupuncturists do that too. We don't call it dry needling. We call it ashi points. We've got thousands of ashi points all over the body, meaning it's a point not on a meridian that has individualized characteristics. So we can do dry needling, but we'll call it ashi. We'll put some ashi points in the area, in addition to all the other points that are going to support the healing of that.
Absolutely.
So bottom line, always see an acupuncturist.
Girl,
unless you need chiro, see a chiropractor. I love them for that.
For sure. Is there anything else that you want to add about misconceptions to functional or integrative medicine that you feel like we might have missed?
I can't think of anything.
Okay. Perfect. All right. And the next topic that we really wanted to cover is being your own health advocate. I feel like this day and age, there's so much information out there that there's really no reason for you not to really be your own health advocate. Do you want to talk on that?
Yeah. So it is overwhelming to be your own health advocate, especially if you don't love medicine, like I geek out on medicine, so it's easy for me. But if you don't geek out on medicine, it can be very overwhelming, but you don't have a choice. You have to be your own health advocate, because if your health is solely in the hands of your doctor, no matter how well-intentioned they are, they're busy. They're seeing 20, 30, 40 people a day, depending on their practice. They don't have time to make sure that all the pieces are falling together for you. They don't have the time or the energy. And so it's your responsibility to make sure every year you're getting your labs done. You're comparing your labs to your old labs. You're bringing your concerns to your doctor, because I can guarantee you they're not comparing labs. They don't have time to compare. They're just going to look in range, out of range, no problem. They're not looking at optimal range unless you're, of course, seeing a functional medicine doctor. And so you have to take charge. And also, being a health advocate means standing up for yourself. So if you don't feel like you're getting the care that you need to get a second opinion, a third opinion. You need to advocate for a test. You need to say, I'm not comfortable taking this medication until I get more testing done. And I know people are always like, you're not the doctor, so who are you to say? As you mentioned before, there's just so much information online. Oftentimes people become really so knowledgeable in their area of disease or ailment or condition that they actually have things to bring to the table that the doctor might not be so brushed up on. So I think that people need to hone in on their power and show up to their appointments as an equal, and just approach medicine as a team and get the freaking ego out of medicine. I don't know if I should say that.
You should say that. No, you should say that. Because I feel like that's really a big problem. And I don't want to say this to degrade our current doctors. I call them the white coats. And I don't want to degrade them, because they've worked very hard and they're highly intelligent, hardworking people. And they did get into it to help people. But I mean, and we've kind of talked on the phone about this, about the current state of our education system for our medicine. Like, we have to turn this around. Like, all these new discoveries are happening. It's very hard to keep up with our science these days, just because how fast everything's moving. And then, the education of our doctors are lagging behind. It's like the old way of looking at the body. And so I don't want to say it's not their fault, because they got to be lifelong learners and you got to be on top of it. But when you enter a space, when you're trying to help someone heal of a disease, you're an equal, because you have to take what they say and, what and combine it together.
Yes. Yeah. And we did talk about this on the phone, but, academia is always going to be behind the current studies, because it takes a tremendous amount of time to change curriculum. And also, they're not going to change curriculum based on a couple little new studies. It has to be tried and true models. Mm-hmm. And that's not how functional medicine works. Functional medicine's like, give me the new studies, give me the thing that's that little tiny anecdotal, study. Give me that. Let's take that and run with it, because if nothing else is helping, I want to try the new stuff. I want to see what else is out there. Even if it's not been perfectly studied, we're open to trying it. And unfortunately, that's not possible in a Western medical system for so many reasons. And I always like to say it's usually not the doctor's fault. We have to understand that they go through an insane amount of schooling and stress, and they come out, $250,000 in debt. Then they're going into a residency where they're exhausted and overworked. So by the time they are patient facing for their first time, and a patient comes to them and has like word vomit about everything that's going on and all the things that haven't worked for them, and I want to try this one random new thing that I heard about, if that doctor has never heard about it, they don't even have like the mental capacity at that point to even deal with that times 40 patients a day, every single day. Mm-hmm. So there's so much disconnect from the very beginning all the way to that point. It's not like doctors don't care. It's just, that's not what they're trained in, and they don't have the emotional and energetic, and they just don't have the capacity to take that on at that point. That's like taking on a whole new education they never even tapped into. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that's when you're like, we need to keep ego out of this. Cause I'm thinking personally, I paid all this money. I went to this prestigious school. I have doctor in front of my name. Like, and then someone's telling me that we're going to do it this way. I'd be like, no,
get out of here.
My way. So it's like, I understand. And they're product of the system, and our system's very broken. Like, you know what I mean? There's just so much going on right now, but I feel like as long as we know and we're aware of it, we can move forward intelligently and make the right decisions.
Yeah, definitely. I think there needs to be a drive for openness.
Mm-hmm.
And like we've been saying, the ego's got to come out of medicine. We've all put in so much time and energy, or a lot of us have put in so much time and energy into our degrees, but you have to be able to say, this isn't working, and I don't know why this is working. Let's come up with a team approach to figure out why. Let's get to the bottom of this, even if that means I'm not the person that's figuring it out for you. And that's not supported in our system because we don't have time for that conversation. In the traditional doctor's visit, you have between 5 and 15 minutes. Nothing's getting done between 5 and 15 minutes. Mm-mm. So it's broken on many levels, which is why so many amazing MDs are leaving traditional systems, opening cash-based practices, and learning functional medicine and or partnering with integrative providers, because they want to continue down that path of getting people better without all the red tape and constraints of the system.
Oh my gosh. And it's really unfortunate that's really where we're at, but I'm glad to hear that, it seems like they're very frustrated with where we're at. And so they're making a change themselves with their own practice.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting in your practice, one of the outside of like mold toxicity, that you deal with mysterious illness, because I know if people are frustrated, they're like, look, I feel this way. And you're telling me that there's nothing wrong with me. So now what? And they come to you. And do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So mysterious illness is a huge part of our practice. And basically what that means is I've been to every doctor, every specialist. I've had every test, and we're really talking about standard tests that you would get at your doctor's office. Mm-hmm. And technically nothing is really wrong, but I can't function and I've been sick for, 10 years. That's our most common patient that we see in our practice. And it usually always boils down to a couple of things, the most predominant being stealth pathogen. Stealth pathogen is Epstein-Barr, Lyme, cofactors, mycotoxins in mold, gut dysbiosis, or pathogenic bacteria in the gut. All of these things can completely shut down your body to the point where, and once you have one, like for example, mold is an immunosuppressant. So once you have mold, you're going to be just a petri dish for everything else that comes your way. Do you know how many mold and Lyme patients we have? Mold and Lyme are like this. And people will say, oh, yes, because once you have mold and you're so suppressed, Lyme doesn't just come from ticks, can come from mosquitoes, can come from everywhere. Most of us have had Lyme exposures, but why can someone bounce back and other people are just taken out by it? And it comes down to your innate immune system. Your body is able to fight off pathogen. That's strictly what it comes down to. And so if you have mold, which so many people have and they don't even realize they have it, and then they encounter another pathogen like Lyme, it's going to wipe you out. And so we have people come into our office and they're like, I've had Lyme for so many years and I have all of these symptoms. And we get into the deep, woods of our intake or our consult. We determine that they most likely probably have some mycotoxins. If it's relevant, we'll do some testing. And then it's like, well, no wonder why you've been to every Lyme specialist in the world and you couldn't get better, because you also have mold and you can't heal from Lyme if you have mold. It's not possible. So we deal with tons, this is my soapbox. We deal with tons of stealth pathogen and mysterious illness in our practice.
That's incredible. I mean, that's amazing to me. I didn't even know that. So if someone's kind of at the end of their rope, they've been to all these doctors, which you quote mysterious, illness, what do they do? Who should they start seeking out? What should they start Googling? Where can they go? Where can they turn for help if no doctors help them?
So there's a few different tiers to this. The first thing is going to be making sure your lifestyle is as clean as possible. So if you live in a condo or an apartment or new construction, make sure you have really good air filters. You're changing your air filters every single month. You have air doctors or really good air filtration units in your house. The other is going to be grounding, making sure you're drinking really clean water. Most of our tap water is terrible. It's got tons of toxins in it, and it's not conducive to health or healing. So getting a Berkey or some kind of water filtration system that's going to be good for you, eating clean organic food, getting rid of all the junk, all the alcohol, all the highly processed food. Start with your foundations of health. From there, if you continue to have issues, and then you could start Googling mold symptoms, mycotoxin symptoms, see if any of that resonates with you. If so, find a practitioner who is mold literate and they can test you for mold. Unfortunately, it's not a test that you can order. Actually, there may be Vibrant Wellness Labs you may be able to order on your own. We use Great Plains Labs. We think it's one of the best testing diagnostics for mycotoxin illness, but that's a great place to start. If that comes back negative, well, sometimes it comes back negative because your detox pathways are so shut down that you're not even able to eliminate the mold that you have in your body. But you really do need to work with someone who's literate in stealth pathogen and mycotoxins. And so asking questions to the practitioners, oftentimes people don't interview their own practitioners, and you need to. If you're going to start working with a healthcare provider, you need to interview them and see if they're qualified to work with you. They might not be. You may be way above them. Wow. Out of your
I didn't even think of that until you said it. Because even now I'm sitting here like, I can interview my health person like that. That didn't even occur even into my mind.
Yeah. So
what are some questions?
Yeah. So in your first appointment, have you ever treated this before? What's your success rate? How many of these have you treated? Are you up to date on the current XYZ? So if it's mold, if someone says that they do mold, I would say, what labs do you use? You can Google all this before, so you should know the answers. But if they deal with mold, they need to be able to tell you quickly, what labs do they use? What do they do if the mold test comes back negative, but they have every check on the list for mold symptoms? Does that mean that they don't have mold, or does that mean that they're not able to detox the mold out? Like, these are things that you need to be asking your provider. Do you know what to do if my test comes back negative, but I'm still extremely symptomatic? What's that next step going to be? What supplement companies do you work with? Do you put me on the same standard protocol that you put every other patient on? That's always a red flag. That is always a red flag when they say, oh, we've got a great detox protocol, everyone's going to go on it. No, everyone's different. Everyone can't be on the same protocol. How long is it going to take to heal? Am I going to be with you forever? Do you have customers or clients or patients that I could talk to that have gotten better? They should. I mean, at Balanced Healing at my office, we have dozens of patients that are willing to talk to other patients to tell their story. And if they don't have that, why? Number one, maybe they're just starting out. I don't know. But if you're an advanced case, you need a provider who's treated this successfully. And that's not just mold. That's that's stealth pathogen, autoimmune, any kind of chronic health ailment. And read reviews. Reviews are going to be very telling.
Wow. I mean, just that last spiel is so liberating, even for me personally, because it just kind of gives me the options that I don't want to call it a victim, but I'm like, I have to follow this structure of the insurance company. And it just didn't occur to me before that I don't have to hire these people because these people are working for me to help me.
Yeah, exactly. And you need to be a team, and it needs to be a very healthy practitioner client relationship. And it needs to go both ways. For example, we've had people in our office who are not healthy for us. And so it's not ever in our best interest to treat them if it's that toxic of a relationship, because we're not going to want to treat them. It's going to be so distressing for us to communicate with them that it's in their best interest to find someone that clicks with them better. So you need to make sure not only are they, educated and successful in treating whatever it is you're seeking out, but also that you have a repertoire with them, that you're able to communicate with them and you feel like, you get me, I get you, you get me, we're on the same page, let's move forward. If there's like a disconnect where it's like, you're not hearing me or I'm not hearing you, not the best choice. There's so many amazing practitioners, just find someone different.
And if that happens, it's perfectly normal because, it's just to be human, really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's very important to find someone that you feel like is going to be a good match for you.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that you wish to touch on being your own health advocate that we haven't covered?
I don't think so. Just trust your gut and make sure you're being respected. So this happens a lot with women. If you go to a doctor's office or worse, the emergency room, and you're not being trusted as a judge of your own symptoms, you're hysterical, you're emotional, maybe you just have a low pain tolerance. Those are red flags. And that's not a relationship you want to fix. That's like okay, thank you, next. I'm not going to even try to fix you as my provider. I'm just going to find a new provider. So trust your gut and make sure you are really showing up for yourself so you can look out for the red flags so you know when it's time to find a new provider.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're speaking to a long history of how women are treated in the healthcare system.
Yeah.
So yes, thanks for touching on that we really need to be our own advocates and we need to have our own voice. And if that doesn't make the other person happy, that's not our problem.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
thanks for touching on that for sure.
Of course.
So the next thing I want to talk about is actually what I'm really excited to hear you talk about is tapping.
Tapping, yes. So tapping is it's a nickname for EFT, emotional freedom technique. It is a series of acupressure points based on acupuncture points that you tap, literally like tap, in a succession that helps your body eliminate and process emotional stagnations and reduce stressors, kind of helps rebalance the nervous system to bring you back into a state of calm, especially if you're super stressed out, super frazzled. Tapping is one modality that you can use, but there are many different modalities that will help alleviate or help you process emotional stagnations. And I think most people think healing is only physical or biochemical. A large part of healing is emotional. And so if you have unresolved emotional traumas, healing is not going to be 100% possible if those are not resolved. And most of us do have traumas, even if we don't realize it. So tapping is a great thing you could do at home. There is an app. What is the name of the app? Oh, I'll have to get back to you on that. There is a tapping app that you could tap along with, and it teaches you. You can go on YouTube and you can learn how to tap. My favorite tapper, his name is Brad Yates. He teaches you how to tap. Every subject you could ever imagine, he has tapped on it, whether it's anxiety or getting over a breakup or financial abundance, anything you can have an emotional trauma associated to, he's got a video on. And I adore him. So I tap all the time when I'm in a state of stress.
And it's amazing because I feel like tapping needs to be taught to us when we're in grade school.
Yes. Can you imagine?
No, I can't even imagine. Can you imagine how our teenage years would have gone if it's like, okay, I'm aware, I'm stressed, I'm just going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do a little bit.
Yes, tapping all the points.
Can you imagine?
And it's easy. And you could do it like in between office meetings. If you're a kid at school, you could do it. No one's going to know what you're doing if you're just doing this. No one knows what the heck this is. You're tapping. It's just it's so calming. And on my TikTok, if you link it or have it somewhere for the office, I think it's at Balanced Healing. We have a video on tapping, shows you how to tap so you can learn, exactly where the points are, all of them, because there's a lot of points.
And I just want to hit on why tapping is so important because it's literally resetting the nervous system. And when you reset the nervous system, you reset your brain waves, you reset the way you view the world. And in doing that is you're literally affecting how your DNA is expressed. You're affecting your epigenetics.
Yes, that's correct. So, there's this incredible realm of science that's now really blowing up. And that's, like you said, epigenetics, and it's how our genes are expressed through environmental changes, whether that's food, exercise, thoughts. And so we are not as programmed as we once thought we were, which is really cool because we could break the cycle, whether it's an anxious cycle, an addictive cycle, a eating disorder, or food addiction. I mean, you could break any cycle and you don't have to be a victim to family history of disease. Oftentimes we'll say, oh, it runs in the family, but we don't ask, why does it run in the family? Is it because of environmental changes that literally express your genes in an unfavorable way? Is it because of diet? Is it because of the mental patterns that you grew up with, that you learned as your norm? That's then going to change your DNA. So it's so important to show up for your health on every single level. And, I always tell this to my clients, your body is like a car. And if I told you have one car for the rest of your life, you're going to get oil changes, tire rotations, every little checkup you're going to do, because if you burn that car out, it's done. You're going to have to walk for the next 100 years. You only have one body and you only have one mind. And it's so easy to take health for granted if you've never been sick. But when you are sick, you realize no money, no anything in the world can replace your health. And so start now, get your healthy habits. And now you are going to be happier if you're healthy. You are going to be more energetic if you're healthy. You're going to be having a more abundant, fulfilled life if you're healthy. All of these things are in your control. So whether it's regulating your emotional thoughts, eliminating emotional stagnations, getting your diet in check, exercising, advocating yourself, putting up boundaries so you don't take crap from other people. That's all part of your health. So this is something I'm super passionate about.
Yeah, me too. And what I was thinking of too, when you were using the car analogy, don't treat your car like a rental car.
Yes,
like a lot
exactly.
of people. So I agree with you, but I really honestly feel like the controlling our minds through meditation and tapping and breathing and different techniques like that is going to be the future of healthcare. And call me crazy, but I foresee this happening. Like, you get diagnosed with cancer, like, oh, Mary, we're diagnosing you with cancer. This is going to be our prescription. We're going to have you go to this meditation camp for a week. We're going to teach you how to meditate, how to tap, and how to breathe. And at the end of it, we're going to retest you again to see if the cancer is even there.
So, Memorial Hospital in South Florida does something similar.
Really?
Yeah, because when my mom had breast cancer, part of her treatment plan was acupuncture, Reiki. They had a Reiki provider in their hospital. And then meditation, where she went and they visualized, they were walking through this guided meditation. And it was a bunch of people with cancer in the room, and they visualized that their cells were like Pac-Man, and they were scanning their body. And anytime they saw something like cancer, it would just eat it right up. And there are actually studies on this where that type of visualization, the outcome was a reduction in cancer. So, is it important to also look at other modalities like food therapy, nutritional supplementation, drug therapy, radiation, possibly surgery, possibly? Yes, but that's not to ignore that there's all this other stuff we could be doing. And that's the integration right there. That's the integrative medicine. Just because we can cut it out does not mean we shouldn't be meditating and also supporting our body with nutritional supplementation and also doing all of these other things like Reiki and acupuncture.
Oh, that's, I'm so excited to hear about that. I mean, I know that we don't use 80% of our minds. And I think if we start using our minds more, we'd be healthier. And I really think that's going to be the future of healthcare, is learning how to control your mind and learning how to control your body. And therefore you can actually control how your DNA is expressed, which sounds crazy and woo-woo, but that's literally where we're going with healthcare.
Yeah. And I love how the crazy woo-woo stuff is actually the science. Like, that's what we're studying. That's science. And so it's funny how the woo-woo just has really gotten validated by science.
It really has. And I'm actually having to kind of wrap my head around it now, where I'm reading these things and it's all science-based. And I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me. How am I going to tell this to people? It's backed by science, yet it sounds so wild, but it's exciting, that the new horizon.
So exciting. But there's also something to be mentioned, that if it's not studied, that doesn't mean it's not effective. It just means that it hasn't been studied yet. Absolutely. And so just because there's no science on it, I have gotten on this train where I love the science, because then I could be like, look here, it's proven. But it can be a dangerous spiral, because you want to also be mindful that TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, has been around for 4,000 years. It wasn't really studied until past 50 years. Mm-hmm. So things can work and not be studied, and that's okay too. So just have an open mind.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that. I appreciate you saying that, because we also might not have the machines and the tools to study to prove these things yet.
Or the financial incentive to do so. Studies are expensive. And if there's not someone who's taken a personal interest in studying it, Big Pharma is not going to study it. They don't have anything to benefit from it. So who drives studies? Statistically, it's the pharmaceutical companies, it's the medical programs to then innovate within the hospital systems and the medical systems. Every once in a while, you'll have individual doctors. They'll do the smaller studies because they simply have an interest. But you got to realize that not everything has a financial incentive, and therefore it's not going to be the thing that everyone's trying to study.
Well, and I know that Dr. Joe Dispenza, I'm not sure if you've heard of him. Yes, he is funding and doing some pretty wild stuff with science, like he's scientifically studying all this and running people through it. And that's what we're finding, this woman's cancerous tumor was reduced by 60% after 6 meditations, 3 days of meditation, twice a day, reduced it by 60%.
The mind is very powerful. I once read this article, which was so interesting, on this man who had terminal cancer. It was a very rare cancer. It was riddled throughout his whole body, and he had like 3 months left to live. And he heard that in Europe, there was a drug that was being used off-label to treat this cancer. And he begged his doctors to get him this drug because he knew if he took this drug, his cancer would go away. And his doctors, on a last-ditch attempt, were like, all right, we'll get you this off-label drug because you're terminal anyway. And he took the drug and all of his cancer went away. And he was like a medical miracle. And like 6 months later, maybe 8 months later, he found an article that said that the cancer all came back and it's not a cure. It was a placebo. And hearing that in his head within like, I don't remember the article, a very short period of time, all of his cancer came back.
Oh my God.
And so it's like, you have to be so careful with what you hear and what you allow in your head, because you will create that for yourself, as hard to believe as that is.
Yeah. I'm so excited for the horizon. I don't feel like people really understand the horizons that we're about to encounter in the medical field, in this world, with what the instruments we have, the tools we have. And honestly, it's ancient wisdom all coming full circle again.
Isn't that ironic? I know.
So ironic.
Yeah, I love that.
I do want to touch on teas a little bit, because I know that you do have a tea company, and I know tea is very powerful. Can you talk just a little bit quickly about the teas and how you can use it to heal?
So herbal teas are literally nature's medicine, and we don't, in our typical diets, even if you eat really healthy, we don't get enough variety of nutrition, antioxidants, bioflavonoids. We don't get enough plant-based medicine, minerals. All of these plants are so highly nutritive. And so I always say there's a few things you could do to get healthy that are cheap or free. Herbal teas is one of them. And that can mean going to the grocery store and getting fresh mint, or growing some herbs in your backyard. Every day you should be consuming herbal teas. I actually started an organic loose leaf herbal tea company for that reason. I felt like bringing ancient herbals into the modern world where it's delicious and affordable and accessible so everyone can be drinking these teas is just a really great way to bring people into herbal medicine. Because oftentimes getting people to take Chinese herbs, they're like, woo-woo, it seems kind of scary. Is it even regulated? So let's do it by tea. Tea is just as effective. And so we have some phenomenal formulas using my traditional Chinese medicine background, my herbology background, and I'm actually drinking some tea now.
That's awesome.
I'm always drinking tea. I have at least 3 cups a day of tea, probably.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? You feel like we didn't cover anything you want to get off your heart to the public that you feel like they need to know?
I would say just be a little bit cautious and be careful over who your providers are. You know, the blessing to internet is that we have such an influx of knowledge. The downside is there are always people who are underqualified, spewing information and then telling you they can help you. Mm-hmm. And I see this on TikTok all the time because my business, Balanced Healing of Jacksonville, my medical practice, we have a TikTok, and we always produce content to help you become your own health advocate. And oftentimes we'll see things like, you know, quick ways to biohack your health. And you just be skeptical. You know, for example, if someone says, this is what you need to do to get healthy, go get all your vitamins and minerals tested. And then if anything's deficient, just take that supplement and you'll feel better. Mm-hmm. Those are red flags. Mm-hmm. And we see that a lot. It's a trend right now online, which is why I'm talking about this. Mm-hmm. You don't want to do that, because you need to ask yourself, why are you deficient in those things? Is it because you have a pathogen that's eating your iron? So if you take iron, are you now feeding you, or are you feeding the pathogen? And so you have to be very careful. Why are you so deficient in all of this stuff? Don't just take it. Look deeper. Always ask why. Always ask why, because things don't just happen. With that being said, healing is 100% possible, and it's accessible. It is so accessible. And if you can't find someone qualified, my whole practice does telehealth. And like I said, we're not trying to be anyone's hero. So if you are not our best candidate, we will send you to someone who will be a better match for you. So make sure you find a provider with a similar mindset.
Thank you so much for saying that. That much needed to be heard. So if people want to find you and get more of your content, make a connection with you, where are all the places that they can find you at? Yes.
So you can go to balancedhealingofjacksonville.com. That's my medical practice. If you want herbal tea, yinyangteaco.com. So YINYANG. And then Find us on TikTok at Balanced Healing. We're also on Instagram at Healing of Jax, JAX. So we've got tons of content everywhere, and we're always promoting free content. So there's a plethora. If you go to our website and go to resources, there's like dozens of ebooks that I've made for free on there. So it gives you a good guiding post as to where to start.
Awesome. Thank you so much for fighting the good fight and
You're
being
welcome.
in it and pushing forward. And I definitely appreciate your time. Time is the most valuable thing. It cannot be replaced. Thank you so much for spending your day
welcome.
with me, an hour
Thank you for inviting me. I had a really good time talking about all my
love
things.
Talking to you. I learned so much. So thank you again. For anyone listening to this podcast, you can find me on jamieblaskas.com. We have content regularly coming out. You can also find me on Instagram, Jamie Blaskas, as well as TikTok and YouTube channel. And we will catch you next time. Thank you so much again.
Thank
you. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.